Great. Can we do a roll call?
I can do it. I'll do the roll. Carr,
Yes.
Fairweather,
Yes.
Fiskus,
Yes.
Lewis,
Yes.
and Singleton is not present.
Next on the agenda is approving the minutes of the 9/9/25 meeting. Did everyone receive those and have time to review them?
Yes.
Can I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
I was taking notes, but now I've already forgotten.
Oh.
Motion, second, is that right?
Oh, there was, I
Motion,
gave you a second.
I don't know, one of us did one.
You made the second.
Yeah, the roll is Carr,
Gretchen made the first and
Thank
Carla
you.
made the second. Yes.
Fairweather,
Yes.
Fiskus,
Yes.
Lewis,
Yes.
motion carried.
Okay. Item 3 is old business. There's none. So we'll move along to item 4, which is new business, review of current charter for possible changes and additions. Alan, did you have anything you wanted to start with?
I give you a handout. I kind of went through the different sections we talked about, except for recall. In in the different articles of things that you can look at potentially. I know the mayor suggested, limiting the number of things that are on the ballot. But these are just things that are in the charter that, could be looked at, potentially revised. So the first one was as to the council meetings, as to, there's just some minor changes there. But the main one would be council member, one of them is that they could attend by electronic means, which is in the council rules currently. It's in the emergency rules. Some cities have added that to their charter, and in the council rules, it's limited to a number, like 3 times that you could do it that way per year or something. It's not that you could do it every time. So it's just like in a situation where somebody was unable to attend, for work reasons, or they were ill and didn't want to come, that they potentially could attend electronically. I stuck that in there, like, again, these are just my suggestions, and you can make that determination. The other thing was, our charter doesn't currently, for meeting, it doesn't really define what a meeting is. So I took the revised code definition that says meeting means any prearranged discussion of public business of the public body by a majority of council members, to make that an addition. So that would be another potential change in that section.
So, quick question, the electronic attendance, you said that right now it's limited to 3, so you're proposing that it not be limited?
No, it probably should be limited.
Okay.
Like I said, I wouldn't want somebody to
Right.
phone in every time. The council rules have a limit on it, and, the charter says they can adopt their own rules, regulations for how they hold their meetings, so they already have it in the rules, but it might be clear to put it in the charter and limit it to, up to 3 meetings per year or something like that. And for committees, though, that could be different, commission members, but any of those bodies, sometimes there's people that, just have something, they could attend by, phone or whatever other means. That would be helpful for short.
Okay.
My question, Alan, is you removed the written request of the mayor, or written request of 3 council members. And I think the written request states a purpose for the meeting, which is required to be done. And I think that removing that written will end up with there not being a notice of what they requested. That's just my concern.
Yeah, I think it's covered somewhere. Any vote or request for calling of a special meeting shall state the subject or subjects to be considered thereon, in the next line below the.
Right, but if there's not a written request, then that's not anywhere for the record.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, it feels like the formality of a written request sort of puts the onus on action. It is harder for that to be misconstrued, ignored, et cetera. So I agree with you, Rich. I think it makes more sense for it to remain as written.
We had very few
Right.
requests for special meetings, really.
But the other thing could be via email to written or email. 'Cause I mean, I don't know how, if written is defined, but
I was going to say, is written and email different? Because that's what I was thinking is email.
That's a good question. I would assume that that email also is considered written request,
so it could say written, which includes emails.
which includes emails, yes. Does anyone else have any other questions about this first section?
Before we would pass it, the only thing I would look at is when somebody calls a special meeting and it's only 24-hour notice, if you only have 4 council people that show up, you have the meeting. And I'm not sure that's good either. You know, it's not, we may look at require a certain number of council members to be in attendance that creates more than a simple majority if there's that brief of notice given for a meeting.
Yeah, I think the meeting, I don't know if that's, it seems like there was something in another part of the charter about, you know, obviously if it's for an emergency, if there's only 4 people there, they couldn't pass anything, because there's not enough people
What
to
is,
pass an emergency legislation. So generally, they would need, I think, at least 5 to do that. That's in a different section of the charter under ordinances.
So what's behind this, just to clear up language?
For these changes?
Yeah,
Yeah, just
just for the written, just this specific
Yeah.
part.
for that part written, and then, like you said, any other potential changes that might be beneficial.
It does require the approval of 5, Alan, so that's covered in there.
But if there's a special meeting and then only 4 people show up, or 4 members show up, you wouldn't be able to pass
Right.
anything by
I'm
emergency.
fine with it. I didn't catch that the first time I read through it.
They would be able to pass stuff by motion, I guess, you know, to adopt the contract or something like that, but most other, if it's a legislative matter, they wouldn't be able to adopt it if there weren't enough people at the meeting.
can you remind me is it 24 hours for meetings in general that the public needs to be notified?
That's generally the point, to make sure that we have a list of media.
Yeah,
I think they get notice of it.
but it's
Some other- anybody
24
can
hours
get
is
on
the
the list.
minimum.
Right.
So this keeps it in line with that,
Right.
but it does, you're right, complicate the ability of folks to actually attend.
Typically, they won't call it if there's not enough people that are,
Yeah.
enough council members that are available.
I'm okay with it, except for the removal of the written. I think it's important to have the request come in as to not only that they want a meeting, but for them to state the purpose of the meeting.
I would also like to see the limit of electronic attendance included in this. I understand that it's in council rules, but like you said, if council can make those rules, sounds like they can change those rules, and it feels like a slippery
Right.
slope.
Do you think like 3 meetings per year or something would be a,
That's what it's at right now. It sounds
Right.
reasonable to me. What do you think?
I agree.
I agree.
and then at the end of that is, like you said, just the definition of meeting, what it actually means, since it's not defined currently in the charter.
Yep, looks good on my end.
And the second page of that, the only change there was the designation of an alternate location for a council meeting. Before it said, shall be made not later than a preceding regular meeting of council. So I just changed it, notice shall be posted in the city building, social media sites and provided to media outlets. You know, if there's an alternate location. Sometimes something came up between meetings that they thought there was going to be a lot of people. They
Right.
really technically can't change where the location is.
And
I
the
mean, it
last-
doesn't happen often, but
Right, but I mean, several times in the last year, there's been that question, correct?
correct.
So do we have to define a time period for that? Would 24 hours also make sense for that as well?
Or probably longer for that one, because, you know, they would know that they need a bigger site. They'd have to make arrangements for it, so they would know more than 24 hours in advance, maybe 48,
72.
72, yeah.
If it's going to be at a different site, 72.
Any feedback?
So then if, like, something comes up and it's less than that time, we're just going to keep it this, like, is that what it would read as?
Yes.
Okay.
Right. They would hold the meeting here, and if there's some
Overflow.
topic that, yeah. I think in the past, they had to use the police department for overflow and council chambers for overflow, so it doesn't always work out the best.
So the final edit in here,
Yeah, it was just clarification on the open meeting. If there's a violation, doesn't prevent public body from subsequently, just says taking formal action before, but I said approving and/or taking formal action by ordinance, resolution, or I guess formal action is repeated on the same subject matter. Should say probably other action on the same subject matter. So it's just a clarification more than anything as to,
so what it's saying, I just, if I could translate, so I make sure I understand. It's saying that you can't pass a resolution, ordinance, or take formal action in a non-open meeting. However, you can then retake that action in a public meeting to formally pass it
right, you can cure any potential violations that are there by
by doing so.
discussing it in public.
Okay.
And that's kind of how it's always been in Maumee under the charter that's there. You know, but I just wanted to add some clarifying language to that.
Looks good to me. Any further questions or comments? So at this point, will you rewrite with the changes that we've recommended today?
Correct, I can rewrite that again and get it out to you.
Okay. And we don't need to take any formal action to ask you to do that?
No, and then I think once we have everything in place, then we can decide which sections you want to put on. If you want to put them all on the ballot, you know, at once, you know, where they vote on everything together, you know, one vote, or if you want to vote on things separately, or if you just want to limit the number of things that you put out there this time
So.
for possible changes.
Question about that, because we've kind of got two different warring things here. In reviewing the requested changes that you had brought forth that were just for clarity or to bring us in line with how things were actually happening, et cetera, you know, things that are clearly necessary but are not the pressing issues that the mayor and citizens have brought forth, there's like 10 things. So if we're looking to do this 3, maybe 4 at a time, it makes sense to me to sort of map out when we would want to do this and how often we would want to do this. So my first question is, can this go on any ballot? Could this be on a primary?
I think it has to go on at a general election is
So-
when they get voted on. So every year there's a general election in November. So that's the time frame right now that we have to work with. It obviously can't go on this November's, but so next November would be the first time the first set could come up. If you decided to do additional ones or not do all these things, or, you know, maybe you decide to do nothing, or make no recommendations, then, you know, the next election would be the following November before anything else could get voted on.
So if we abide by the mayor's recommendation of 3 to 4, we're looking at minimum of 2 years of charter changes on the ballot.
Correct.
Okay.
So I think some of it's just education probably of people, and then, like I said, the one with the military service, when we got to that, I changed the format of that a little bit to make it clear what was really going on. I don't know if that was part of the confusion last time, but
So why don't we continue to go through the few that you have written up, and then I think it might benefit us before we leave the meeting today to have a conversation about if there are others we need to be focused on.
Right.
Because it looks to me like what you did was
Right.
like, you went through and you did the ones that are like obvious, but unfortunately, they may not be the ones that we
Correct.
put forward.
I understand
Right,
that. I'm
yeah.
just throwing my suggestions out as to
For sure,
things that
for
are in
sure.
there that could use clarification and really should be modified at some point. Like the next section is Article 5, Municipal Clerk, the powers and duties.
Okay, when you have that, Alan, on the conveyances, I'll use that as an example. Where in the charter does it say who signs the conveyances?
I think there's another section where the mayor also signs conveyances.
Okay, 'cause that's always been a question as to who has the power to sign a deed, and other people have signed deeds.
Yeah, I'll look at it again and see. I think the mayor does have that authority to sign it, but it may not be absolute as the only person. So I think, you know, typically, since it's a charter, you know, council can potentially designate somebody else to sign deeds to, but I'll try to look that up.
And the other part of that is, a lot of times the clerk would sign for lot splits and that would be eliminated by this. And that's something that is kind of a formality but it expedites for the resident if they're trying to split their lot as to who can sign it, because that's how it was always done for years and years and years. Municipal clerk signed those.
Right, the clerk still does that under the different section. I think it's in the ordinances.
Okay.
Under the lot split provisions, that
Okay.
the clerk of the planning commission, which is the municipal clerk, performs those duties when it's when a plat is not necessary, then the clerk can sign those splits along with the public service director.
Okay. 'Cause you run into a situation, let's say somebody's selling their house, and they do a location certificate or a survey, and it comes out there's an encroachment. And both neighbors agree, we'll just move 5 feet over, so you got a clean title. Well, if we don't have a provision in there for the clerk to sign it, it could take weeks instead of a
Right.
day.
Yeah, I mean, my main concern, we could probably leave in conveyances maybe, but, you know, when you say evidence of indebtedness
Right,
and all other instruments to which the municipality is a party except contracts, it's kind of broad as to what does that really
Yeah.
mean, and, you know, what's the ramifications if she doesn't, you know, or the clerk doesn't sign those. I mean-
I guess if we're going to leave in that the clerk can sign anything, then we have to clarify that, because if it says they shall execute, then you're requiring both the mayor and the clerk to sign. I don't think that's the intent either.
So maybe the clerk may execute.
Yeah, I think that's what I would do.
Conveyances.
So for the non-lawyers in the room, I think what I just heard was that this is both too broad and too narrow, and we need to be more clear on who can do what.
Yes.
Okay.
And that can be cleaned up. I think Alan understands where I'm coming from. We can clear it up and look at it.
And then look at it again.
So what we're trying to do is really just to expedite it for the residents. If there's
Right.
something that's very simple that needs to be corrected, that we can get it done as quickly as possible.
And I'll look at the mayoral authority too. and see if he's the only one that can sign deeds, so.
So you're going to rewrite this and bring it back to the next meeting,
Correct.
taking into account what Rich said. Okay.
I'll get it to you before the meeting, so.
Perfect.
And then the next is Article 8, nominations and elections. This is the primary election change.
Which feels straightforward.
So what I would, ultimately, if we add this language this way, I'll check with the Board of Elections, make sure that's going to satisfy them, that there's not going to be a different primary date other than the normal statewide primary date.
Do you know what the state primary date is?
It's usually March, I think.
And what is the one that, like, all the other communities around here are using? Is that March?
Same, yeah, same. It would be the statewide primary date that they have.
That makes, that way if there'd ever be a change, we wouldn't have to update our charter. That makes sense.
Correct. And then it left in, if there's not more than double the number of candidates, there wouldn't be a primary election. So that would remain, but
That sounds good to me. Does anybody else have any comments, any concerns?
Sounds good.
This is one that I think does make sense to move forward with in November, next November.
right, that one should go on. That way it'll be in place for the
Yep.
next council election if it passes, so. I mean, if you think it would be easier to pass it by putting in the date that it would be held, it'll be held in March, but like Rich indicated, if the election law changes, then charter would have to change again, and we'd be stuck with a special election.
Oh. Did you have a question?
Yeah, I thought the statewide primary date was in May.
Is it May? Maybe the filing date's in March, yeah.
Filing date, I think, is March, but the primary date is in May.
Okay. That's why this just says it'll follow the election laws
Yeah,
for
because
primaries.
here it's May 5th.
Okay.
All right, last call for comments on that.
Then the next article is on contracts and fiscal matters. Again, this right now has the clerk certifying funds in the accounting records, which the clerk doesn't really have access to that. I think the position and title changes that have been made, it used to be like a clerk treasurer type position. So this would just change it to the finance director would certify any contracts, and I put an amount in there, so it's not like paper supplies, that there has to be a certification on those. And so again, these are just things I threw out there to make sure that you determine should be no amount, or they should certify everything. That would be, again, up to what you want to recommend to council.
The 75,000, is that like a standard amount?
It's kind of the spending limit right now without council authorization,
Okay.
so.
Any questions?
Do we know what the other communities are using for theirs? Has anybody looked into that?
I don't know if they have this type of provision in their charters, but I can look at that if you
Yeah, I'd
want.
like to know that, because
Okay.
I think this would be controversial, and there should be a basis for it. I'm going to go to the last part that's struck out, because under Ohio law, if the finance director does not certify it, that's why that provision in there, that it becomes void and unenforceable. So it's kind of on both parties to make sure that they get that done. And by taking that out, we're basically, what happens is that you could have somebody spend more than 75,000, you can't do anything about it,
Yeah, so it should remain in.
I thought.
Okay.
There's got to be something in there to hold them to, you can't just say, oops, I forgot, so.
Right. Any comments or questions?
And the last that I at least had was the military service one. So the last time when it went on the ballot, just the whole section was stricken. But I thought maybe it'd be clearer that if they are called into military service, their office would not become vacant. That way it's clear as to, that
It's
doesn't create a vacancy.
right.
And that puts us in line with federal law.
Correct.
Does that just leave an empty seat during their time of, or is there someone who is like an interim appointee as,
Well, that's something you could add, that there could be an interim appointment if it's vacant for more than 90 days or something. Again, that's something that you could put in the charter that way. Till they return.
and
Do we have anything that's like that? Like anything else where an interim, besides leaving the office? Like for
No.
illness or?
No, I think for council members, what is it, Josh? You can be kicked off if you miss too many meetings.
3
potentially,
consecutive meetings, I think it
Right.
is.
But there's no other.
Without an excuse, without
Without
being
an
excused.
excuse. But there's nothing that provides for a fill-in for those people if they have an extended illness, so.
I'm curious about your perspective, and Josh, if you also have perspective. So council members, does it make more sense for that to be something that's filled? I mean, that's a lot of split votes potentially. Should there not be someone there? I know the mayor is that tie-breaking vote anyways. I feel like an argument could be made both directions, if you will, and I also don't want to be disrespectful to a service member who is, doing their duty to the country, but for the, continuance of a well-functioning government, does it make sense for there to be an interim that is appointed? So I'm curious what your thoughts are.
I agree with you, and I had the same thought. However, I think for purpose of just getting this passed, that maybe that's something we go back and look at
Gotcha.
as a separate, get this part of it passed, and then
Yep.
look, because like you said, the mayor has the vote, so you're not gonna have, generally, you could still have a 3 if somebody's absent from the meeting, but there is by having that vote, it would take care of it for the most part. But I do agree, if somebody's gonna be deployed, and it's gonna be a year,
At least, right.
then do we look at an interim, and I guess it would be, the person would be appointed the same way as if there was a council vacancy,
Right, or if multiple people were deployed,
Right.
yeah.
then
Right.
you start running short of being able to have enough votes, would be
Right.
the other question.
Yeah. Well, that's something maybe, Alan, that you could just add for us to look at if they're going to be absent for a period of known for more than, let's say,
6 months.
180 days, the council can appoint an interim in the same procedure as filling a vacancy, and the interim would expire upon the return of the council member. Yeah. So I think you could get by for 6 months, but if it would for some reason be extended, then you could go ahead and fill it.
We're thinking this is one that would go on the 26th ballot.
Potentially with the interim, potentially without, depending upon, I'm understanding that, right? We want to see both options. Okay.
Yeah, we can decide how we're going to do it after it's written up. If it's something that doesn't look like it's going to create any issues, then,
I do agree with you. I think this is one of the ones that needs to be
Yeah, me
on
too.
the next ballot. Are there any, my notes are all messy now. Did we miss any of the ones that you provided us, Alan?
Those are the ones I had initially, going through things. Like I said, those are just my suggestions, so you're free to, anything else you see in there that, or that has been requested to be looked at.
So we did come up with a potential list at the last meeting, including the primary date, which we talked about today, military service provisions, again, talked about today. And then there was recall provisions, term limits, elected official compensation review, and vacancy clarification. These were the top priorities, not the only ones we wanted to look at, but the top priorities. The recommendation was given by the mayor to limit ourselves to 3 to 4 per election, so that we did not overwhelm or potentially confuse the voter. I thought it would benefit us today to have a conversation about which ones we need to be imminently focusing on. With the just disclaimer here too, that I am investigating whether or not I can be involved in the conversations around recall. So we can talk today about if, which I think is an obvious answer, but if that is one of the ones we want to pursue with the next, with what we do next, but we would ask that we not speak about any of the specifics of it until I have clarity as to whether or not I need to recuse myself.
I think the same thing with term limits.
Yep. Yes.
Because how that is written, I tried one of them before, and how that's written is critical.
So, I would like to open it up for conversation. We have already said that military service and primary are 2 things that must be on the next ballot. That leaves us 1 to 2 more to add. So, I'm curious what the other board members up here think is.
I think the term limits and recall should be included.
What do you think, Gretchen?
I think term limits for sure. But I also still feel strongly about the unclassified fire and EMS, which didn't make our list, but that they were still unclassified. We talked about it last time, but it didn't make our list.
Let me
For
review my
civil
notes.
service.
I think civil service, the last meeting they had actually decided that they were going to make them classified
Okay.
firefighter, paramedics, so they have that power to do that. Of course, the charter can override that too, so,
Okay, that's great.
so
Thank
right
you.
now they're classified.
Okay,
And so they're classified correctly, and the charter does not currently override it.
Correct. I mean, the Civil
Magic.
Service Commission,
I'm
right?
glad I said that.
Right.
So that still leaves you 1 more vote in there if you have a different topic.
Oh, okay.
Let me ask you a question on what you just said. If they did that, then do they have a committee that reviews the civil service determinations?
They're under the charter, their determination is final, pretty much.
That's horrible, I'll tell you.
Right.
I'm just saying, I tried a number of these down in Toledo. I'll give you one good example. They give you points under their system. You could be a kid working at McDonald's when you're 15, and McDonald's responds you had 3 tardies, and they give you points for that, and you can't become a police officer or a firefighter. I had one where the guy came to apply for the test, finished at the very top. He had applied for a job at Kroger's. They did a drug test, and he didn't pass the drug test. It was marijuana. Now, so the committee ruled he was ineligible. And I tried it, and it said you could only remove somebody if it's a first-degree misdemeanor or worse. Well, in Ohio, if you just have a trace of marijuana, it's a minor misdemeanor. So therefore, he did not violate it. The guy's now is very high up in the department, but could have been eliminated because there's no review committee.
Well, I think there is in their rules, there's a different review procedure, but just in whether they're in the classified or unclassified service
Yeah.
is the issue
But I
right
think we
now.
need somebody to
Right.
take a look, because there should be a review committee to review how they assess those points, because I could give you a number of stories where I went down there and it was just, made you sick how they
There's
assess
yeah.
those points.
There's a set of civil service rules that they've amended more recently, but I can get you a copy of that to look at.
So there is potentially something that would warrant a charter change.
Well, I would want to look, because I'd want to protect somebody applying from a job,
Okay,
because they could just rule it because they don't necessarily want this person.
yeah. So if Alan can get you that, you can review and let us know if it meets the standard that you're
I would like
discussing?
to.
Okay,
Yeah, I'll get you the updated rules that they are looking at.
Okay. On the recall, I think that has to go after what went through the last time.
yes.
I think we'd be making a mistake, because what happened was, they didn't have that case until like December of '23. So nobody could have done anything about it. But now that that case exists, then we either have to go back and change our recall language to make it our own, which other communities around here have done. Waterville most recently did it. Or you have to vote to pass the specific language that's required under the Ohio Revised Code. Otherwise, if this were unfortunately to happen again, it's going to be another mess if we don't deal with it.
Right. And Sarah put something together, and I did distribute that to you to look at, the different provisions that have been made in different cities. So I think it's just something ultimately you'll have to, make a determination on those different topics that we discussed last time as to whether number of persons that can be recalled at once, how long they can be in office before they're subject to recall.
The period of time from when the petitions are taken out to when they have
Right,
to be
how long they have
filed.
to circulate the petitions, how many signatures they need, just a variety of topics that all fall under that.
Can't say anything about this.
Right, yeah, you're not. So,
Okay, cool. So,
But like I said, I'll follow up with the Ohio Ethics Commission. I'll ask them about those, the term limit topic and the the recall provisions, if that's going to create a problem. I don't think it is, because it applies to everybody across the board, but they'll give us an informal opinion. Usually it doesn't take too long.
okay,
I'll have to email you and give you a copy of what we're sending to them first. Make sure you're aware that that's the request being made, but
okay.
other than that, it's not too complicated.
Would it be easier if I submit it? I do it for.
You can't get it.
I,
Alan's, you might be able to, for city councils and that, the law director is the only one that
only
can
one that
get
can
it.
submit it, okay. I was gonna
Yeah.
say, I've gotten ethics rulings in the past for
For
my stuff,
But
so.
under ours, I know that the law director has to be the one to request it, or they don't.
Okay, so yeah, I would love to see the submission prior. So what I'm hearing is primary day military service provisions, recall provisions, and term limits.
Well, let's see what we have, because if we don't have that many more, I don't think we have to limit it to 4. If we have 6, I don't think that's an overwhelming problem, because a lot of these are not going to be very controversial.
So I think we have 10.
Hmm?
I think we have 10. Because the ones that Alan brought forth today, unless we lump them all together, which, other than military service, they're, okay, so primary
I
military
only
service,
did 5 of them, I think.
Yeah, we got
Or
5
one.
here.
2,
2, 3.
There'd be 2 more
3.
then, possibly.
So on top
Five.
of what's listed here, we're at 9.
I did 5, which includes most of these except for term limits and the recall provisions, so. Oh, I didn't do elected official
Yeah.
compensation review.
I think we're at
That's the next
9,
one, yeah.
not, and pending the civil service item that you want to look at, that makes it 10.
I don't think we need to have that one in it at this time. It's just
Okay.
something we can look at. If we do, then we can meet again and do it separately. I don't think it has to be on this one.
Okay.
The compensation one, I don't believe needs to be on here either, because there's procedures for council setting up a separate committee to determine that.
Well, I have a question about that, because there is the wage rates on our webpage that shows that each year council and mayor gets more, right? So why are we looking at that if it already shows?
Yeah,
We need to
that's-
look at it for the future, because it only goes out to 29.
Yeah, that's if.
I'm not trying to keep
I don't think it
on-
needs to be in the charter, Gretchen. I think it just, That's something that the council can establish on their own, another committee, to look at the wages and make recommendations for council. And council approves their own, but it does not apply during their term.
It applies to
So
this
you have council members who make different rates of pay, because when they pass the increase, it hits the first half, and then 2 years later, the second ones. So I don't think we really need to do anything with that as a charter. I think the council can handle that. The
Well,
separate
yeah, and last
committee.
time it was said that either the council should get a consultant or citizen committee together, right? And so that's
Yeah,
not even in the charter, is compensation.
It's in the charter, but it just allows council to establish by ordinance
Okay,
yeah.
what their salaries are going to be.
okay.
So-
How did this even come up?
But it doesn't, it's not effective
Before?
while they're in office,
Yes.
right?
did
I don't
not
know, I
bring
just
it up.
had
I
it
can't
notes that-
remember who brought it up.
I don't think I brought it up.
I don't know.
I took a note on it, but it wasn't me. But then I looked and saw that they already are getting raises each year.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is to strike that from our list of considerations.
Mhm.
Do we need some sort of, we don't need to formally vote, just all in favor, aye?
Hi.
Aye.
Aye. Done, cool, great, gone. One last thing for me to potentially have a conflict
Mhm.
over. I don't know that we have any other new business for today. Alan, is there anything else that you wanted us to cover?
No, I think that covers what I had. And like I said, I don't know if any committee members had thoughts on any other portion of the charter, or anybody else citizen-wise had submitted anything to you to look at for changes, but those are the other things you'd have to consider. Like I said, there's obviously a lot of time to do it, but
Yeah, I
sooner
mean,
the better.
even if we come up with new things, are there things that would take precedent over these initial ones that we have determined? I feel like that's a pretty high bar to bump something like, well, any of these off.
And so are we keeping 10, 9 then? Or are we doing 4? I've got primary date, military, term limits, and recall.
We've not decided yet.
Okay.
Sounds to me like what we've decided definitively is that primary date, recall provisions, term limits, and military service provisions are the absolute musts. And if we see how those turn out, if it feels digestible, easily communicated to the public, we can then look to add some of these others in. Because most of the others that Alan has presented today feel very minimal. No charter change is minimal, but they are procedural things to get us in line with, how things are currently done.
I can see, I don't know if I had a sample ballot from the last time or not,
Mhm.
as to how it was laid out in the ballot. So I can't remember if they put all the language in the ballot or not, but I'll try to pull one of those up too, maybe, and get it to you to look at and
Okay.
see how it's going to be laid out.
Yeah, because it was not in the stuff that you sent. I had to go look it up, but it's not in that, so I didn't know if it was, I can't
I
remember.
think we just had the vote total, but not the ballot language.
Okay.
Right, I'll see if I can find that.
Because even with ballot language,
I have
personally,
that.
I've had to go and research before I go in to vote.
Right.
And so I agree that it should be communicated, not in this legalese that you guys talk in.
It does feel like an entire public information campaign needs to accompany this, which is, another thing to talk about. And probably should have quite a large, like a 6-month lead time to begin discussing it. Might even benefit, I don't know if this is out of the ordinary or not, but it might benefit a representative of this body to then perhaps talk to council or, provide that in another meeting so that it's more widely known.
Mhm.
Just a thought. All right, anything else for the good of the order for
Yeah,
today?
I'm going to bring this up. I'm not suggesting we address it now. We get the ones we want on the ballot. But if we're going to continue to, as a body, to address these, something that I had stated that was taken totally out of context was, I was interviewed, and I was asked the question, do you have the power to hire and fire people? And I said, no. And they said, what do you mean? I said, our charter does not give you that power. Well, what do you have? What I said, you have to take a look at the Maumee Charter. Most cities, I'd say 99.9%, either have a strong mayor form of government or a city manager form of government. Maumee's charter provides neither. There is nobody the mayor does not have the powers in the charter to do basically anything. You can take and you use your influence and your experience to try to push things through, but there are no powers stated in there. Then you go to the city administrator, and the powers are not spelled out there either. So then you start running into issues as where does the buck stop? And so if you just have a line, when this was done, it was a very small city, very small. Now it's grown population-wise, business-wise, and you have a lot of things on a day-to-day basis. Who up here on the day-to-day basis has the authority to make those decisions? And it's not in the charter. Everyone, the directors are basically equal under the charter, but that doesn't work anywhere. You have to have somebody who ultimately is responsible for the decisions that are being made. And our charter does not do that.
There is some power, though, of the mayor to do that. So the mayor has executive powers to, subject to confirmation by a majority of the members of council, to appoint, promote, transfer, reduce, or remove any officer or employee of this municipality except those that are elected.
Right, but you have to go through a vote of council. That's what I'm saying. There's no power just to do these things.
Right. No, I get what you're saying.
I won't do it here today, but I'll give you some examples that sometimes if any of you want to ask me if the decision we had to make to fire people that would make your skin crawl. And I wouldn't want to be bringing those up in an open council meeting.
So can I make sure I understand? The way that our charter is written and the way that our city administration structure is currently made, no one is definitively laid out as the person to hire or fire, is that correct?
The mayor can make recommendations, but council has to approve them.
Okay, and so that is a nightmare, honestly. Like, not having that clarity is, from another public servant, HR perspective, that's frightening.
I think the administrator does have that power now. I think it's in the,
Not within the charter, it may be how we've set ordinances
by
up.
ordinance wise, right?
But from what I've read over the past 6 months or a year, it looks like there's been challenges to that, too.
But should the administrator be the final say in that?
I don't think they have to be the final say, but I think it just has to be looked at as to what the powers are. For, who makes a decision on interim to terminate somebody subject to council's approval? There's got to be some power stated in there as to who can do that.
I don't have an issue with council being the person that ultimately has the call as to whether or not to.
Well, I can see that for certain jobs, but for every job in the city,
But wouldn't you just go into executive session if there had to be a more sensitive conversation about employment that you wanted to make sure you were, discussing in a way that abided by privacy and
if
the
you
law?
do that, you have to invite the employee in.
And they can request.
Is
a
that the
public
law
hearing.
or is that our
That's
charter?
the law.
Under our charter.
Under our
provides
charter?
that, right.
That's the piece that I think also needs to be considered too, because on school board, they do bring that to us. They make recommendations and we are often inclined to, that we have no good reason not to trust that that is the case. But if there is a lack of trust involved in that, that's the safety in this. That's the safeguard, is you have a body of people who can then be like, I don't agree with this, or I see some sort of abuse of power. So to me, the greater question is, can we clarify the charter so that it does not create a conflict that would escalate a situation, that it is clear enough and logical enough that a recommendation could be made by the mayor or by the city administrator, but then a discussion could be had in a way that was private, still abiding by executive session law and Open Meetings Act, but did not have that person in the room.
Yeah.
That, to me, is,
Adding the city administrator, I would agree with that, because they're up here every day,
yes.
and some of that stuff comes up very quick, and you may have a mayor that's not even here.
I completely see your point. Being a part-time civil servant in that way, you can't be everywhere at once. That's what the city administrator is here for. But I do not like the lack of a check and balance of that having to
No,
go
I agree
before
with the check
council.
and balance.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, I think that it has to be more than just the mayor. I think somebody who's here every day, all day long, has to be the point person
Yeah.
and given a little, so that there's clarity among directors as to who actually, somebody reports to each
So,
person.
so what you're saying is the recommendation should be made by the city administrator, but needs to be approved by council with the mayor then?
It'd be made, the administrator could make the recommendation, and then you could say, subject to approval by the mayor and by council, so it'd be two different steps.
Two different steps, so mayor first, council
Yeah.
second. And again, I think that clarifying within the charter that executive session can happen without the employee present is important. Yes,
Where does the HR manager then fit in?
that is another good question, but.
They really have,
But an HR manager is not going to make a recommendation to the city administrator to hire,
Recommendation is brought to
right, but an HR manager, I guess what I'm saying is if you have an HR manager that is in place and doing their job is to be a protector of the city. So they're going to make recommendations that would be in line with the law, that would not put the city at risk, et cetera, et cetera. Then your next check would be the city administrator, who could then determine whether or not that makes good sense before it goes to the mayor. Doesn't mean that the HR manager would not be involved in that conversation. That's just a function of government, or a function of a good business. It does not have to be that is written into the charter, because the last steps are what's written into the charter, correct?
if the mayor or the administrator are doing their job right, they will consult with the HR person to
Yes.
review it, to make sure the HR person's satisfied that we're not violating any laws.
But that doesn't go into charter. That
No.
goes into orders of business, et cetera, within the city administration.
Exact, yeah.
And I think, as another point, though, a lot of the employees are under a union contract that
Yeah.
have different provisions for termination.
Yeah,
that, give them a different right
right.
versus whatever the charter provides isn't
Right.
really going to apply to them. So you just
Yeah,
have to
I mean,
be
it's not something we're
cautious
gonna
how
do
we-
now, it's gonna take a longer time to do.
Yeah.
But from what I'm seeing, there's a little bit of conflict over here as to, on a day-to-day basis, who runs this up here?
I feel like that is a huge conflict. And for me, if I'm ranking the things that need to go on this next ballot, that is right up there with recall provisions. Because that, to be frank, feels to me like one of the main complaints that we have heard from the citizens is who's running this, who makes these decisions? And we had folks digging through the charter, digging through all of this, who could also not come up with that answer.
Right.
So might as well make it more clear.
But like I said, too, that currently the administrator does have that power
Yeah,
under the ordinances to make hiring and firing decisions, determinations, so.
but,
Right now, you have no administrator.
and I do feel like the elected officials should have a say in that.
I don't disagree with you at all. I'm just saying,
Yeah.
in the day-to-day part up here, there's gotta be one
Yes.
person that the mayor can go in and hold accountable
Yes,
and not have the administrator blame the finance director, the
Yep.
finance director
Yep.
blame the administrator, or blame the inspection division or whomever. There's gotta be somebody the mayor can go to and hold accountable.
I completely agree. I think we're saying the same thing, Rich.
I've been through it.
Okay, so
But just
to
as
add
another
to-
point to that first, before you retire, so if you look at the council powers, they're really just granted legislative powers and the power to create offices and fix the duties, bonds, and compensation. So you'd have to change that portion of the charter if they're going to be involved in hiring, firing, or
Well, right now, you got it that it has to be
Termination
subject to confirmation by council, so they
Right.
they
it's
automatically
like
are.
a conflict within the charter,
Yeah.
So,
basically.
so it sounds like unfortunately we are adding another thing to Alan's homework list. Sorry, Alan.
It is, but and
Yeah.
again, we may do it as a separate issue, because it's going to take a lot of explaining, I think. But our charter is not applicable to a city this size anymore.
Right. So adding to the list is hiring and firing. Council powers, mayor powers, admin powers.
And then establishing authority within the directors
Yes.
so that there's one person that can be held accountable.
Would that, does that, wait, no, I don't understand what you just said.
Well,
Establishing
right
authority
now,
within the
if you take a look,
directors.
each of the directors are equal under our charter.
Yes.
And so what goes on is, you got one that points the other, one points at the other, and you got nobody you can go in and hold accountable for. So the finance director does not go to the administrator, each one doesn't go to one person. And so they start pointing the fingers at each other, and it becomes a mess on trying to get things done. There should be one person who is actually responsible for the day-to-day operations that is held accountable. That's what I'm saying. Because right now, there's nobody, there's no hierarchy. I mean, you can't, there's very few businesses that you don't have, a plant manager, then you have people under the plant manager, but you got one person who, the council members are kind of like a board of directors that they hold accountable. But if you got the powers that are all equal and they're all pushing the blame on the other one, then it just doesn't work. And we've seen that here.
So you're talking essentially the reporting structure for the entire city. Is that something that is,
As to the directors is.
as to the directors,
Yeah.
is that something that's outlined in the charter?
Right, so like the director of finance is subject to the direction of the mayor. It serves at the pleasure of the mayor and council, so that means obviously council can terminate finance director. I think it's the same for director of public service, director of public safety, and the law director, same type of language.
So it sounds to me like
We could all be out if council decides that.
because I hear what you're saying, but but my concern then becomes, do you concentrate too much power? Like, I think, do you concentrate too much power in what you're proposing in one non-elected official who, like, that's the piece, where's the check and balance in that? Where does an HR, do we need an HR director instead of an HR manager so that there can be somebody with, like, how does that,
I don't think you do, but the concern I have is this. I would say, take a look at every other city government you see. You're not going to see anybody that doesn't either have a city manager or a strong mayor.
Yeah.
We have neither. So right now, it's kind of, everything is kind of in limbo. Well, a lot of stuff goes on here on a day-to-day basis that really, the mayor should be able to go to one person and hold that person accountable. I was with UPS for 10 years, and I was in HR for 5 or 6, I can't remember years, with them. And you can't, I don't know of any business that doesn't have one person on a
Yeah.
day-to-day who's held accountable to the board of directors,
I hear you.
except here.
So can we, and maybe this is something we look up, I would be interested to see what other, like municipalities around us, what the structure of their
They have a city
administrators look like.
manager
Yeah, and then all of the
or
directors.
a strong mayor, which is a full-time mayor, or actually, that they're held accountable, one by the mayor and the other by council.
Yeah,
Some cities have a city administrator, but that person, oh, I thought you had something you wanted to add. But that person, there's somebody who is centrally located
yeah.
that is responsible, that you can go to as the mayor and council and hold that person accountable for what's going on. And not get into finger pointing, saying that's not my responsibility, that's the finance director, that's not mine. No, it's yours, you should have been dealing with this.
So, Alan, is it appropriate to ask you so that we can just like see the differences between Mummy, or do you want one of us to do some research into?
No, I can do that,
Okay.
so.
And again, I don't think I would do it with these other ones, because I think it's more complicated.
Yes.
But I think something we could look at afterwards and spend a little more time on,
Yeah,
to come up with something that's more realistic as to, I've just seen what goes on, and one person, if you don't have one person centrally held accountable, it breaks down. And with the number of employees we have and as much stuff we have going on in the city, you can't have somebody saying, no, that's my responsibility. You can't have somebody going out and signing insurance contracts, and they're not the administrator,
right.
and it didn't go through council. Those kind of things can't go on, but they do. And you got nobody to hold accountable because there's not that one person who's here all day long, every day.
So what I'm hearing is that the buck stops with the city administrator in your ideal structure.
And then the council and the mayor hold them accountable. And if they're not doing their day-to-day job, then they're removed. But that's what, from my experience and what I've seen over the last couple of years, it needs to be spelled out.
Yeah. So we can start looking into that with the caveat that that will likely not be something that we go at in this first year here.
Yeah, I
But it
think
does
Ann-
seem like something that we could and can begin looking at now because it's more complicated than just
Yeah.
some simple.
I think, like you said, have an Allen look at what other communities do, how they operate, where that falls at. Because it's, we're one of the bigger suburbs as far as business goes and that, so we're a little more complicated.
Yeah. Okay. Does anyone else have anything that they'd like to add for the good of the order? We are 1 minute over our hour designation.
Overtime pay now.
Overtime pay. Oh, I'm gonna get $0 instead of $0? Great.
Time and a half.
Time and a half.
No, I'm good.
Good? Okay. So, we probably won't meet again until we get some clarity from the Ethics Commission. But Alan will work on that, and so with that, we can look for more information from Alan, and I guess I'm gonna do a motion to adjourn at 6:32 PM. I have a motion.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second, okay. On the wrong thing. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Amazing.